Welcome to OAC Vancouver's podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We believe that Jesus is needed and relevant for people in Vancouver today. The message of God's love and promise of wholeness was destined to be experienced within a faith community that worships, studies scripture, and prays together. We warmly welcome you to journey with us towards greater connection, purpose, and peace. We'll be sharing our recorded services and conversations with health and wellness experts. Enjoy.
My name is Colin, and I volunteer here as a stand-in pastor when Pastor Rhoda needs my help. And today is one of those days. It's so good to be here again, as I've said. But I'm wondering, does anyone else do what I do? Do you choose a word at the beginning of the year to sort of focus your year around? Anybody? There's two of us. Wow. I just want to recommend this idea to you. I find it very, very powerful to take one word and say, this is what my year is going to hang on. And it has made a huge difference for me. Actually, Pastor Rhoda started me on this idea many, many years ago, and I found it to be really helpful and meaningful. And so after the craziness of the last few years, I needed a powerful word. I needed a word that was really going to make a difference, or really was going to be significant and give me something to hold on to, give me something to hang on to. Something that helps me know that I'm loved by God. I have practices that sort of help me understand the awesomeness of God. One of them is that, as you get older, sleep is kind of a distant friend. And so I find myself getting up in the middle of the night, and I open my bathroom window and I look out. And where I live out in the country a little bit, there's very little light pollution. And I can see the moon shines and the stars shine. And I just stand there in awe. The song we just sang, God riding the ancient skies. It's just so real and so powerful. In those moments, I just go, God, you're good. God, you're absolutely amazing. And it reconnects me with that first touch of God, the first time God touched this planet. Because, I don't know about you, but I find it very easy to believe that I'm worthless. Even standing here, I woke up, when I get to preach, I get up early on Sabbath morning because I suffer from a severe dose of imposter syndrome. I've only been doing this for 43 years, but every time I do, I go, God, why me? I shouldn't be standing here. There's nothing here that makes me qualified to be doing this. Absolutely nothing. It's so easy to get caught up in that. It's so easy to focus on my mistakes, the times that I've done this and done it badly. And then I hear the words of God from that creation story. And it resonates in my ears. Let us make man and woman, let us make them in our own image. That's who I am. That's who I am. That's who you are. That's who we are. Image bearers. Talk about a beautiful, visionary beginning of a story. And so I chose a word from that beginning story. The word, and you're going to put it up on the screen, the word is tov. It's a Hebrew word. It's translated as good 5 times in Genesis chapter 1. And then the 6th time, God he just amps the whole thing up. And good is not good enough. Now it's very good. It's tov mayod. Tov describes the goodness of things. But not only that. Tov describes the goodness that happens when good things interact together. Tov describes that goodness that happens between good things, when good things are working together for the good. That's Tov. And I don't know about you, but that's what I want to be part of. That's what my 2023 needs to be about. Tov, the goodness of things when good things work together for the good. But as you can imagine, It's March already, and I've been working on this Tove thing, and that thing has taken a severe beating in the first 3 months. It sort of collides with reality. I don't know. People seem to be trying to convince me about certain things. Some of them are kind of frivolous, and some of them are pretty serious. One of the things that someone really tried hard to convince me about, they even sent me a diagram. Which is the right way to hang a toilet roll? Does the paper go over or under? You see what I mean? This can divide a congregation. Some of us are just going, all the over people on that side, no, we're not going to do that. It's seriously. This was not just a suggestion, all right? This was a command. This is the way to do it. You know what I'm talking about, you over and under people here. But hey, and we're not even going to talk about politics today, right? I mean, way to ruin a church service. And then I've got someone else who's doing their level best to convince me about their point of view on climate change. I haven't told them I've ordered an EV. But then there's something way more serious than all of that. Jesus followers, like me, who see, for example, someone get dressed up like the devil, singing irreligious, quotes, songs, and they get so bent out of shape. They're convinced that these things are signs of Christian persecution. And I don't know about you, but I do not want a faith that is so fragile that goes into a tailspin of fear whenever something like that shows up. Faith has got to be so much more than that. I mean, in that kind of world, in that kind of polarizing world where everyone's trying to convince each other that their way is the right way, the only way, where does Tove stand a chance? I mean, just want to check in with you. Does my experience connect with yours in any way? Are you experiencing that kind of polarizing thing in the world? Are you experiencing people wanting you to align in certain camps? It's a crazy world. And it seems to me that it's time that we do something about that. Do we just ignore it? That would be nice. Just pretend. Do we get involved? That's dangerous. But it seems to me like we've got to stand for something here. And again, think about how you might fit into the story, but how this is playing out for me is that very often it brings out the worst in me. My intentions are good because I get the thing that annoys me is when God gets misrepresented. I can get angry about that. I can get argumentative about that. I can have strong opinions about that. I can get arrogant about it, and I can end up with my self-righteousness and cynicism on display. And all this means that I, in turn, am also contributing to this negativity. I'm being part of the problem, not part of the solution. I'm just adding to a world of negativity, and I'm part of the problem. Where is the Tove? Where's the good working together with the good for the good in that? All of this, in a way, connects back to Pastor Rhoda's sermon of last week. If you were here, it was a great sermon on the Beatitudes. There's that Beatitude which says, blessed are the peacemakers. And it seems like someone wants to add another Beatitude after that. And we'll put it up on the screen. It goes like this. Blessed are those who agree with me. For those who are right like me are on God's side. And so we end up in these silos. Well-intentioned silos, but silos nevertheless. And disharmony reigns in our world. You don't do it in my way, you aren't doing it God's way. What if we showed up differently? What if there's a whole different way that we could handle this? What if we didn't settle for just trying to establish our point of view like everyone else is trying to establish theirs? What if we didn't identify with one side or the other? It doesn't mean we walk through the middle and become a nobody. But what if we sat with Jesus' statement in Matthew 5, verse 9? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Peacemakers. What is peacemakers? Well, we can put the Greek word up there just so that you can go home and say you learned something different today. The Greek word is eirenopoios. It's a combination of two other words, eirene, which means peace, yeah. But it also includes ideas like tranquility. Sounds nice, right? Harmony, security, safety, prosperity. And in the biblical literature, whenever it appears in the Bible, it also includes the idea of being at peace with God, which is such a nice place to be. And the word poieo, construct, to build, to prepare, to be the author of. So peacemaker means that you're actually a constructor of peace. You're the author of peace. Peace starts with you. Wow. So I want you to imagine that you are not sitting here now. You're sitting on that hillside when Jesus is talking. And you're hearing him say for the first time, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." What do you hear? What do you understand? What does it mean for you? When Jesus is speaking about peace and peacemaking, what comes home for you? You see, the chances are Jesus definitely wasn't speaking in English. He didn't say peacemakers. And he wasn't speaking in Greek, so he didn't say eirenopoios either. Chances are he was speaking in either Aramaic or Hebrew, most likely Hebrew. And so he uses a word that we use very often, because it's a Hebrew word that's kind of snuck into English. We'll put it on the screen. You all know it. Shalom. 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 And if you have Muslim friends, they greet you using the Arab version of this word. Every time they come up to you, Assalamu alaikum. Salam, shalom. You hear the similarity? Which means peace be upon you. And by the way, if you have Muslim friends, then the appropriate response to that is wa alaikum salam. And unto you, peace. Now, what happens if we actually greeted each other that way every day? What happens if the first words we said to each other were about peace every day? How would that change things? Someone comes to you and they're all wound up and they're all excited and they're all passionate about something, and you go, "Peace, bro." I don't know, it kind of just deflates the argument right there, right? But this word shalom does some very, really, very, very heavy lifting. Just check this out. All of this is wrapped up in one word: completeness, wholeness, health, peace, welfare, security, soundness, tranquility, prosperity, perfectness, fullness, rest, harmony, and the absence of agitation and discord. All of that in one word. Oh, English is such a poor language comparatively speaking, right? This idea of peace and peacemaking is all over the New Testament. Every time there's a guy named Paul, and he writes a whole bunch of letters, and they make up most of the New Testament. And every time he writes one, he starts it off and he says, "Grace and peace to you." Now, typically speaking, when people wrote letters back in that day, that's not how they started the letter. They just simply said greetings. But he's into something bigger here. He's not just into greetings. You ever get those letters where you open it and it says, "Dear householder," or "Dear occupant"? I don't know about you, but I get one of those, I go, "Bzzz." Circular fire right away. But I get one that says, Dear Colin. Oh, this is the difference. This is the difference between grace and peace and greetings. Most of those letters were written to people who were living as minorities in a polarized society. And when Jesus is speaking to those of us who are now sitting on that mountain, the Bible actually describes what we're like. That group of us that are sitting on the mountain listening to Jesus speak. In Matthew 4, it says this. People brought anybody with a sickness, whether mental, emotional, or physical. Jesus healed them one and all. More and more people came. The momentum gathering, besides those from Galilee, crowds from the 10 towns across the lake, others from Jerusalem and Judea, still others from across the Jordan. These people desperately needed healing. We're sitting there in desperate need of healing, in desperate need of shalom. And they see Jesus as the bringer of peace. Oh. I want to suggest that this is the role that the church could be playing in our society today. In this polarized, crazy, pulling apart society that we live in, where even toilet papers can divide people. In that society, blessed are the peacemakers. I'm a dreamer. I dream the church could be so much more than it already is. I love this place. I was just talking to Manny when we were sitting here earlier. There's another church that's only 10 minutes away from our home. And because of my wife's health, it's actually easier for us to go there. We've tried. It's a wonderful church, great people, group of people. But there's, I don't know, there's something about this place. There's something about this place. But what if there could be something more about this place? I'm sorry, I'm a dreamer. I can't help myself. I want you to imagine that you're talking with a friend. You're down at Feast and Fellow, that restaurant down on 41st. If you haven't been, sorry, no advertising, right? And you're sitting there talking, and someone says, I see you every Saturday morning, you go into that building on the corner of 37th and Bailey. What happens there? And your answer is, well, I tell you what happens. It's all about connecting with the God who passionately loves us and the whole world. And we just come to celebrate the love of God. And we just so mind-blowingly taken away by this awesome love that we just come to celebrate it. And not only that, we also come to reestablish our identity in this world. And part of that identity means that we have something to do with peacemaking. Oh, really? They say, what on earth are you talking about? What does that look like? Well, you say, it means that we move through the world so filled with the love of God that when people come to us, they know they're going to be loved. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter their sexual identity. It doesn't matter their sexual orientation. None of that matters. They know they're going to be loved. It doesn't matter their race. It doesn't matter their economic status. None of that matters. They know they are going to be loved. That's what this is about. And also, we're passionate about things like wholeness, and safety and tranquility and prosperity and fullness and rest and harmony. Those are the things that drive us. Oh, wow. I got a funny feeling that if we had that conversation with people, this place would be overflowing. We'd be running 3 and 4 services. But I have a very wise daughter. I love discussing these ideas with my kids because they always inform me and help me to understand things better. And her comment was, yeah, Dad, right. Aren't you laying a heavy burden on these people now? Aren't you kind of coming down on them just a little? And she brought some great wisdom to the table. She said, whatever you do, Dad, don't forget, people are really stretched right now. Don't forget that compassion fatigue is a very real thing. It pays to listen to the wisdom of your children, guys, parents. So I thought maybe, all right, if all of that's true, how do we break this down? How do we bring it down? How do we make it? I love words. Most sermons I preach have a one-word title. If I've got to be able to say it in one word. So, here's my one word. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Curious. Curious. Again, this isn't original with me. Yes, I've been wrestling and playing with the word for a while. But just a little while ago, OAC leaders were having a meeting, and I was on Zoom, and towards the end of the meeting, Kira said something that just smacked me right between the eyes. She says, and I don't know if I'm quoting you exactly, Kira, it was close to this. What if we were all a little more curious about the people around us? And I'm sitting there quietly, but something inside of me is yelling really, really loud. And I said, one day I've got to preach about this. Today's the day, Clearest. Your fault. What if we showed up in our family, workplace, neighborhood with great curiosity? Not with great telling people what to do, but with great curiosity, intensely interested in what others experience, how their world works for them, what they value, what they believe, and what they are concerned about. What if we showed up like that? I would suggest that could be a beautiful first step to peacemaking. On the same day that my daughter gave me the little lecture about sort of calming down a bit, my son came to visit. And naturally, have the conversation with my son. It's tough to be a preacher's kid. We're talking about this, and he told me about a conversation he had. His grandfather was a nurse and designed hospitals. His grandmother, a nurse. His mother, a nurse. So when COVID came around, we were kind of really focused on the physical health dimensions of COVID. And then we have health issues in our homes. So we were very, very focused on the health side and making sure that we took care of the restrictions so that we weren't part of the problem. But my son's work involved him interacting with people who had a different perspective. And now that the heat has kind of dissipated around the whole COVID, the divisiveness of the COVID issue, they've been able to talk about this. The conversation went something like my son saying, I was extremely concerned about the physical well-being of people. I wanted to make sure I didn't infect anybody. I wanted to make sure I protected people physically. And I understood you not to be concerned about that. And then hear the magic words. Help me understand where you're coming from. And the person replied, well, I looked around me and I saw all these extremely lonely people. And all I could see was mental health problems coming up. And so that was the thing that drove me to make sure that there were still opportunities for connection. And he said, and it looked to me like you didn't care about that. But now I understand from what you've said, why you... And my son said, oh man, I looked at, I thought you were being reckless. That help me understand position. Opened the door of understanding and mutuality about a highly controversial and divisive issue. Help me understand. What if we showed up as in the world as help me understanders? You see, people like us are also not only concerned about health issues and that type of thing, and we're also concerned about spiritual realities. We live in a religiously diverse community. And actually saying religiously diverse is actually an oxymoron. Because the word religious comes from I did Latin in high school, I know. Sort of ancient history thing. There's a little poem that goes, Latin is a language as dead can be. It killed the ancient Romans and now it's killing me. But the word religion comes from two Latin words, re and ligio, which means re-ligament, like in knees and joints, reconnect. So to say that we are religiously diverse is actually an oxymoron. It doesn't work. We are connected, but we're each connected in our silos. I was trained to identify the inconsistencies and inadequacies of other faith expressions compared to mine. But what if peacemaking meant we did something different with that? What if Tov described the potential goodness of all people and all things? What if we were curious to find that? What if we said, help me understand? There's a question I wrestle with. Maybe you're going to be concerned about me now. Most of the Bible story happens in a very limited geographic area. Most of it happens in the Middle East and then spreads to Southern Europe. What was God doing in the rest of the world while he was working with Israel? What was God doing in the rest of the world while Jesus was walking around in Palestine? Was all God's attention there, or was he also doing things somewhere else? I mean, is there any evidence of God revealing God's self in other places? Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers on a very specific hillside in a very specific place in the Middle East. Are there echoes of blessed are the peacemakers in other places? What about, for example, right here in North America amongst our First Nation people? Was God doing anything there? I'm glad you asked. My daughter-in-law is First Nations. And so I was given a Christmas gift. On it are the seven principles by which First Nations live, also known as the 7 spiritual laws. I wear this with great pride because it is incredibly comfortable. These 7 principles, 7 laws: honesty, love, wisdom, humility, trust, courage, respect. But you know what is on the sleeve here as a summary of the whole lot? Use your gifts for a peaceful world. Hey, what's going on here? Maybe there's a wonderful chance and opportunity for a help me understand conversation. Because we talk the same language. A few years ago, 4 of us, Pastor Charles Aguilar and his wife, and my wife and I, went on a tour of different places of worship in Richmond. I don't know if they still arrange the tour, but if they do, you've got to do it. We had a wonderful, wonderful time. Our guides were phenomenal. We went to a bunch of different places. I'll never forget, we went to the Sikh temple, and our guide she's a pharmacist, and her passion for what she was doing just totally resonated with me. A great trash talk Sikh wedding. Ooh, if you've never been to a Sikh wedding. And then we had the most amazing lunch ever. If you're hungry and you're near a Sikh temple, just walk in, they'll feed you. It's their way of expressing peace. We visited the Buddhist monastery and a Hindu temple as well, and our guides were incredibly generous with their time in answering questions. The sacred writings of Sikh people is called the Guru Granth Sahib. It is loaded with a whole bunch of sayings about peace. Go and read it sometime. Well, for members of the Sikh community, peace is all about acts of service. Remember when the streets were shut down and Alex Fraser Bridge was closed down during the winter? You remember the news items? People were out providing food to the people stuck in their cars. Those people were from the local Sikh temple. Peace. A wonderful opportunity for a help me understand conversation. Many Eastern religions have a thing called dharam or dharma. One ancient scribe describes the 10 rules of Dharma like this, and we put them up on the screen. Patience, self-control, reason, forgiveness, sanctity, honesty, truthfulness, knowledge of learning, control of senses, and an absence of anger. Sounds incredibly familiar, right? Sounds like a combination of areno poios, shalom, and the fruits of the Spirit in Galatians chapter 5. It kind of get the feeling that God was busy in the rest of the world just while he was also busy in the Middle East. But talk about an open invitation for a help me understand conversation. How are we going to pull this all together? I love how the Bible is full of case studies. I believe the Bible is a case book more than a code book. And I love how it's full of case studies and how Jesus, and these case studies show actually Jesus living out his core teachings. And I want to take you to a case study which I believe shows you what it's like when Jesus is the peacemaker. You're going right down to the end of Jesus' life. It's actually after the crucifixion. 7 of his core followers have left Jerusalem and gone back home up north. Wow. They didn't even stay around. They left, according to the end of the Gospel of John. They're grieving the loss of their rabbi and feeling a loss about what comes next. Jesus is gone. What to do now? So the way the story is told, one of them named Peter says, hey, let's go fishing. I mean, it's what they did before, right? Is this just simply a question of, well, we've got to do something? Or was this, well, can we start up our old business again? At 3.5 years away from fishing, they soon discovered that their fishing skills have become very, very rusty. They're not catching anything. And Jesus shows up. What would you do if the key members of your core team seem to be going AWOL? How would you respond? Well, if you're the resurrected Jesus, you help them catch fish, and then you make them breakfast. I'm skipping details. You really need to go and read the story. It's gripping stuff. Peter hasn't had any time with Jesus since the night before Jesus was crucified. He lets Jesus down badly, denying him 3 times. It was so bad that there is absolutely no record in any of the Gospels that Peter was even at the crucifixion. And they're still sitting in their boat. When Jesus appears on the shore, when Peter hears it's Jesus, he dives into the water and swims ashore. And they bring the boat and they catch a fish ashore and they have breakfast. And Peter and Jesus have a conversation. This moment has been hanging over Peter's head. He knew it had to come. But it went nothing like he expected. You know, when someone comes to you and says, we need to talk, it's that moment. You know, when someone comes to you and says, I need to talk with you in love, this is that moment. Conversation is incredibly moving and revealing of the heart and mind of God. It's a peacemaking conversation at its heart. No shame from Jesus. Jesus doesn't start off by saying, well, Peter, what on earth were you thinking? Didn't I warn you this was going to happen? Come on, smarten up, man. No shame from Jesus, because Jesus knows that Peter is already doing that to himself. The place where Peter needs to find peace is in here. He's so busy beating himself up about what he's done. Instead, because Peter denies him 3 times, Jesus asks 3 questions. 1 question, 3 times. Except that it's not 1 question. Simon, son of John, you love me? Now, something incredibly powerful is lost in the translation. We miss out on the beauty of this conversation. Here's how the conversation actually goes. Jesus, Simon, son of John, do you agapao me? Do you love me unconditionally? And Peter hangs his head and he looks down and he cannot even look Jesus in the eye. And he says, I phileo you. I love you as a brother. Notice he doesn't give Jesus the straight answer to his question. I love you as a brother. Now, what would you do in this moment? Well, that's not good enough. I need all or nothing, dude. I love you as a brother, says Peter. And Jesus says, feed sheep. 2nd time. Simon, son of John, do you agapao me? Do you love me unconditionally? Peter still looking at the ground. I love you as a brother. Still, feed my sheep. No condemnation, no judgment, no demands, no requirements. Feed my sheep. The 3rd time, and now please, 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 hear the words of Jesus very, very carefully. Simon, son of John, do you phileo me? Do you love me like a brother? And at this, Peter gets a little bit aggravated. You know I phileo you. You know I love you as a brother. And that's enough for Jesus. And he says, go feed my sheep. As I listen in on that conversation between a man who has treated Jesus absolutely shamefully and the resurrected Jesus, the one who's been through death and come through the other side of it into a life that will never end, the one who has all the power in the world and yet serves his followers breakfast, the one with the right to judge, and he yet invites Peter into a partnership. I'm blown away but that's what peacemaking looks like. That's what it's like to restore eirene and shalom, to treat a person as they deserve, as a bearer of the image of God. And when I have my imposter syndrome moments, I hear, give me whatever you got, that's enough. That's enough. See, maybe before we can be peacemakers, we need to be at peace with God. We need to be at peace within ourselves before we can be peacemakers. You see, conversations like this leave me in awe of God. We started off by singing of the God who rides the ancient skies. And I told you of my stories of needing to stand at my window and just be in awe of the Creator. I am in awe of this God, but I am not afraid of him. Maturing love has cast out fear. Those of you who have been around this church for a while, remember Pastor Manuel standing up here and saying over and over and over again, God is not a terrorist. God is not a terrorist. There are some monster God theologies out there, but they don't have the root in the story of this God. God is love. Jesus reveals this to us. If we move against the grain of love, we are going to experience pain. But we do not need to be afraid of God. There's a sense of overwhelming peace when we know God's disposition to us and to the world. And there's a disposition of agapao, unconditional love. Even when the best we can offer is to love him as a friend. Blessed are the peacemakers, because they shall be called children.
Thank you for listening to OAC Vancouver's podcast. Learn more at oacvancouver.ca. If you're in Vancouver, join us for worship Saturdays at 11 a.m. at 5350 Bailey Street. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate, review, and subscribe. God bless you and have a wonderful day.